a warning story.
Yeah.
Right? This could be happening in your business.
Cautionary tale.
Yeah. And if you're not paying attention, are you sure this isn't happening to you?
We've helped hundreds of clients build better construction companies.
We love this business, we love the people, and we've seen what running a successful, profitable business takes.
And we're sharing it all with you here on Construction Hot Takes.
Right. So this week it's just you and I.
Yeah.
And I've got a hot take. I've got a story.
You're making me nervous with this.
Oh, you're gonna have fun with this. I have a story that a friend told me.
Okay.
I'd promised I would keep everything anonymous. He was telling me this story over lunch. My mind was racing about actually talking to you about this. And I said, I'm going to save this up and I'm going to use this for a hot take.
Okay.
And this week it's just you and I, because Greg's
on the road.
He's on a conference this week.
Yep.
And so I thought this would be a great time for you and I to have a fun conversation. All right.
Okay.
So here is the story he tells me.
Okay.
We're at lunch and he says, hey, so I got a story for you. So the VP of the company is going out and visiting regional offices of theirs. And they have this regional office. It's a newer regional office, and it's got a younger regional manager who's running that office.
Okay.
And they've got, let's say, 40 or 50 million worth of business going on. And they're a heavy commercial, light industrial.
Total business or just that regional office?
Just that regional office.
Okay.
Total company is like over $1 billion.
Okay.
So they're doing like, say 50 million out of this regional office. And he says the VP flies out and the regional manager picks him up at the airport and they're driving back to the office and the regional manager starts crying in the car. Mm-hmm. And he says, I can't keep this hidden any longer. I need to tell you what's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I've been falsifying my financials. I have been putting change orders into the system that are pending, that the owner has never seen and doesn't even know they exist, much less is intending to pay them. So I've been projecting more revenue. We've been paying our subs for all the change order work, but I don't know how to get to the owner and get all this stuff approved. And so I've just been falsifying everything.
Wow.
And it's now January.
Mm-hmm.
So they've closed the year for tax purposes.
Yeah.
And I said, I could start asking about multiple failure points, but I said, I need to understand the reporting structure. So this regional person, who does he report to? Well, he reports to one of the VPs, including the guy who's sitting in the car with him.
Yeah.
Well, who does the VP report to? Well, he reports to the CEO, the CFO,
mm-hmm.
The leadership team. And I said, is anybody looking at the financials besides the VP and the CFO? And he said, no. It all goes to the CFO through the VP. So I'm like, so how did the VP not catch this? And then how did the CFO not catch this? And we started talking about all the systemic breakdowns because they're a $1 billion company. They have processes, they have systems, they have workflows, they have limits of authority, they had authorizations. And I was like, this was like the perfect storm of everybody checking a box and nobody actually doing their job. We're making exceptions to the system. And I was like, Jeff's going to love dissecting this.
I got questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which we probably don't even have answers.
I'll answer the best I can based on what he told me.
I guess my first thought on this is like trying to decide was this intentional to cook the books and really make his revenue look higher? Or was it a target of opportunity? Kind of like, well, I'm getting told my revenue is down. And so I'm just going to push all these, they're sitting in the system. I don't know what they're in, whatever their ERP, their project management software is in. I'm just going to go push those across the line and then figure it out later. Like there's a little bit of a difference there.
My understanding,
neither are all that ethical, but There's a difference.
Best I can tell is this regional guy was promoted above where he should have been. He didn't have the experience to know how to go to an owner and start negotiating these changes.
Well, so that was
but he didn't know how to report that he was like they started doing the work like at risk, but he had no plan for getting paid back, and he was trying to avoid looking bad.
So that
he knew it was a Ponzi scheme. It was all going to crash eventually, and he kept it up for a year.
So that thought occurred to me as you were telling the story, and the first thought that when you told me this was, I don't know how this person is running an office. This sounds like a year one PM APM type of behavior.
Yeah.
So that's
You hit that kind of on the head, because I asked similar questions, and he said the guy who got promoted was a successful PM in another region, and they wanted to open this satellite office.
right.
And this guy put his hand up and said, I'll move there. And so he moved his family there, and he took over that office. And I think he was promoted above where he should
Way
be.
above.
Because when it came down to actually doing that job, he didn't know how to do it.
So this is just for my understanding. So $50 million worth of revenue is across how many projects for them?
2 or 3.
Okay. So in all 3 projects, 2 or 3 projects, he's jacking up the revenue. It's what's worse is he's not just jacking the revenue. They've got cost. They did the work.
Yeah, he's paid the subs to do the work.
Holy crap.
I'll add to it. He's had 3 project managers working underneath him on these projects.
Mm-hmm.
One got fired, one resigned, and the third one stopped talking to upper management because I asked about whistleblowers.
Sure.
Well, one was told what to do, and so he quit.
Ah.
One was told what to do, and he wouldn't do it, so he was fired. And the third one just went along. That's the one that's still employed.
This is like, so I'll see your story and just add this little. So I had lunch with a friend, a CFO, local electrical contractor the other day, and we're talking about risk. We've talked about it here a couple times, and this is worst nightmare scenario. The question I asked him was, when you're sitting at your desk and you're thinking about the entire business as the CFO, like, where are you most scared? What like keeps you up at night? Like, what really puckers you up?
Yeah.
And he's like, all the shit I don't know about, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's like, I mean, I could name 15 things I worry about, but what really worries me is the stuff I don't even know about.
Yeah.
And
I know there's
this
things
is
I
it.
don't know.
Yeah, this is it.
So as a consultant, I put on my consulting hat at lunch
Yeah.
with my friend, and I said, you mind if I ask you some questions? And I started inquiring, like, well, what does the VP do to be checking on the regional manager? Like,
Right.
oh, well, there's monthly reports to get put in. Well, when he got those monthly reports, what kind of questions does he ask?
He's
Where is he
asking
seeing the revenue? Where is he seeing the cost? And he's like, the story I was told was that the regional guy kept saying, oh yeah, they're in the system. The owners got them. We're just waiting on them to be approved. But they were lingering.
Common
They
answer.
were aging and aging and aging. Some of these things were 9 months old.
Oh, geez.
At what point does the VP go, you got to start getting some of these signed? Like, you're projecting revenue. We're basing our forecast on projected revenue, but we're coming up on the end of the year.
Yeah.
This needs to turn into actual revenue.
Yeah, that's the
when are
point
you
at
going to be
which-
able to bill for
Yeah, you got to
something?
write the job down at that point.
Right. And then I said, well, what about the CFO? And he goes, well, the VPs all meet with the CFO every month. And I said, so the VP is getting fed the story from the regional guy, and then the VP's feeding that to the CFO, and the CFO isn't banging on the VP going, when am I going to get my revenue? Like,
Right.
we're like, I know you're projecting all this stuff, but actually you're negative.
Yeah.
Like, we need to have a serious meeting with our owners, our clients, and say, we need to get some of these approved. Why did nobody step in? And that's where my friend said, yeah, this is the problem. And I said, oh, as a consultant, I said, not only do you have a financial problem you've got to dig out of, you've got a training problem, you've got a systemic breakdown, you've got a culture problem that has allowed this to happen.
Yeah, you've got a little bit of a process problem, but that's
being
super
given-
solvable.
Right.
But the people problem is a culture issue.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is the exact example of culture trumps strategy, trumps process. If your culture is from a project manager level, you do what I tell you, or you go find another job.
Right.
And don't go think about blowing the whistle to corporate. Like, because I asked about that. They're like, well, people just wouldn't typically go around their manager.
Well, yeah, but even more so from a VP standpoint, if I'm doing a project review and I'm reviewing financials, which everybody at that level should be doing, it sounds like they had some version of a process to do that, but they were clearly just pencil whipping it or rubber stamping it or whatever you want to call it.
Buying the story.
They weren't really looking
Right.
to say, I'm seeing the same thing every single month. Tell me more about what you're doing to get this signed, and having that healthy skepticism
Right.
of, you're telling me the same story every month. When is it going to change? What are you doing different this month to get him to listen to you?
Do you need my help?
Then
Getting
eventually-
these over the finish line.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like,
Eventually you start to kind of realize, no, you're not doing anything, either because you're afraid, then you have to have that conversation. Are you afraid to go do this? Do you not know how? Have you dug a bigger hole than you need to? Like, ask me for help and I'll help you solve this problem. That clearly never happened.
No, the VP never asked. The regional manager never asked for the help. The CFO wasn't pressing on the VP, and this VP is, a middle-aged, very experienced person. That's why he's the VP, and he's a good VP. But obviously, he was
Well, you've also got
not following the process.
I mean, let's just back up even a step. You decide you want to go chase work in XYZ territory, and you've got all the good business reasons to do so. And you need somebody, so you're like, hey, let's get a young, aggressive kid to go there and do that. You've got to know that unless you're sending somebody that's experienced and has run an office before or handled anything more than just a single project, you've got to know you've got to put more, like that's a hands-on kind of a thing. Like, Adam, you are managing that guy on a day-to-day basis until we know he can handle this. We know we're putting him in a little bit into the deep end here. So he doesn't have a very long leash. You have to do that. And the kid that said yes should know that's going to happen. You should welcome it to some degree.
Sure, it's going to make him better. I heard a great phrase last week at that conference. It was, you can delegate responsibility, but you can't delegate accountability.
Nope.
I thought that was a really good one. It kind of tied into this.
Yeah.
Like, whoever put that younger guy in charge of that office delegated the responsibility of running that office, but they're still accountable. That VP was still accountable.
Yeah.
And that CFO is still accountable for the finances of the company. And they all, like, it was just such a huge domino effect. And it could have been caught so much earlier if they had just followed their own process.
People, it could be a couple things. Sometimes I've seen people rely on the process too heavily. Like, they abdicate their accountability of the responsibility of really managing things. And they just go, the process will fix this.
Right.
In this case, there were multiple failures of the check and balances that you're supposed to have. A senior guy looks at the junior guy's stuff. A more senior guy looks at the senior guy's stuff.
Right.
And asks questions all up and down the ladder. None of that, it broke down entirely.
Right.
I think you're right about the culture problem, though. The young guy that got put in that position, he volunteered. He raised his hand for that. I'm not saying he doesn't have accountability by any means, because he's the one making bad decisions. I would expect that he's not in charge anymore, and he might not even have a job. I don't know what the dollar value is, order of magnitude.
But we're talking millions. And so this is, my understanding is, at a minimum, he's on administrative leave. They're considering criminal charges.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
This is fraud.
Yeah.
This is outright fraud. He wasn't the one benefiting from it, monetarily.
Right.
The client is actually the one benefiting, but the client is not responsible for this. This is purely on this is an internal problem that has to be fixed.
So if I look at it from bottom up, it's like, okay, that guy, I'm not excusing, I'm just kind of passing over that really quickly, because where my focus goes is to the VP immediately.
Sure.
That's the role I'm most comfortable in. That's how I think. And it's I'd want to know more about, like, what did he have going on that, did he have a dumpster fire over here that just took his focus away? Despite the fact that they should have strategically said, you sit on that guy like heavy on an elephant. Like, don't let him get out too far afield, but maybe he had a dumpster fire over here going on. So then you start to want to look back at the structure of the organization overall. Say, is this a people problem? Culture problem? Maybe. Looks like it. But there could be some structural fixes to that. It could be you're undermanned. It could mean that VP is in the wrong spot. He's not in the right chair entirely. And that's a bad one. That sucks.
Yeah. And that's a big company. Then I started thinking about smaller companies that we work with, mid-market, right? Maybe you're not, as a project manager, maybe you're not answering directly to the owner anymore. There's an ops manager you're answering to.
Yeah.
Same kind of scenario, smaller scale, but the processes that we designed, the reports that we can run, and the things that you can get with the data tell a story, but it's up to the people that, ask the questions, use that data to manage their businesses.
So it's interesting. So I have a parallel. We have a client. We've been worked with a couple different projects in that 2 billion scale. And they've gone through some similar growth spurts and whatever. And some of their challenges are very much like this, in the sense that they were they're like a big, small company. They still think like, I know every project manager works for me. I know his kids' names. I know his wife's name. I know everything. I know what car he drives. I know everything. I know how he thinks. He does his math a little differently than Adam, but I understand both of them, so I can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where their problems have, they can't manage the business that way anymore.
Right.
Like the guy with his name on the door doesn't know every little thing about every little job. And when you get to that size, you have to rely on the structure is important, but there's got to just be that drilled in cultural training component of this is how we behave. And there's somebody holding everybody account to this is how we behave.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be a negative thing. It just has to be, this is how we do things. And we don't apologize for it. We don't take any shit for it. This is just how we do it.
We ask the tough questions.
Right.
Because somebody's got to ask them. Otherwise, we open up a big can of risk.
Yeah.
Right? They took on a lot of risk putting this person in charge of this regional office, and they didn't manage that risk appropriately. I know we talk a lot about risk around here.
Yeah.
This is like boots on the ground, real world multi-million-dollar issue.
So if I'm one of the VPs or the person that, has to come in from the outside to fix that, meaning like I'm internal to the business, but you're like, okay, we got to get that VP out of here because he wasn't watching the store.
Right.
The kid's gone. Let's bring somebody from over here that we trust. You bring in the fixer.
Yeah.
Right?
The janitor. Who mops up.
Yeah. That's one of those things where you just, you sit down and you go beg, borrow, steal, whatever you can do. Like, okay, CFO, I'm going to go get as much of this as I can.
Right.
But you should just write it off all now, right? Just write it off.
Write the whole thing down. I'll go to the owner.
Every dollar we get will, it'll help, but it's just write it off all now.
Yeah. Because just like change orders for a contractor have a time limit on them.
Yep.
Same thing for an owner. And I'm surprised that the owner never raised the question, like, and we've sent you a bunch of plan revisions or whatever. We've never gotten any change order pricing from you.
So that's a good question.
And that never got elevated to the VP.
So were they not even pricing them, or were they sending them and not following up, or maybe both?
My understanding is they were putting them in their system.
I'd never sent
but they never sent anything to.
Oh, that is a surprise. Why? Well, actually, it's not that much. I mean, let's be honest here.
Developers
and owners sometimes.
It must be free. They didn't send us
they free. I'm checking my contract and they didn't notify me in 7 days. Free.
Yeah. Or they're asking, I don't know if they talked to the regional guy and he said, yeah, we're still working on that. I'll get it to you.
Yeah.
But for months and months, I mean, these projects, some of them are over a year old from what I understand.
So it was across multiple jobs. It's fascinating to me.
The thing
not in a good way.
The thing that shocked me was like that it went on so long before it.
Right.
And it took the regional manager having a breakdown and admitting it. It wasn't like they discovered it and confronted him with it.
Yeah.
He just couldn't bear it anymore.
Yeah.
He couldn't live with the weight of his facade anymore. So anyway, that was the story I had for you today.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
It's a good story. It's really bad
It's
news.
It's a warning story.
Yeah.
Right? This could be happening in your business.
Cautionary tale.
Yeah. And if you're not paying attention, are you sure this isn't happening to you? Like, what kind of systems of checks and balances do you have? Does your culture support that kind of stuff?
Yeah. You could have sophisticated software, sophisticated structures, VPs, all kinds of titles. But
best software on the planet.
Yeah. But then you have to have educated, ethical people operating those processes. And then you layer some checks and balances across the top of that just for belt and suspenders.
And I think there's still one little piece for me was always the culture issue of why didn't the project managers ever raise a flag above the regional guy to the VP? Just send him an email like, hey, there's some shady shit going on here. I'd like to have a private conversation with you. Is there a whistleblower hotline at the company? This is a bigger company, but did they feel like there wasn't a line of communication? Like what was going on there?
Yeah.
So, all right. Now we got to wrap up this episode. I wanted to thank everybody for listening to our hot takes today. Jeff, it was a true hot take. You had no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea going into this.
And just for our listeners, we've also set up an email address, hottakes@ascentconsults.com. Send us your questions. Send us your stories from the field. Send us the topics you'd like us to talk about. We'd love to hear from our listeners, what they'd like to have us discuss, dissect, and opinionate on.
So,
and that's all we have for this episode of Construction Hot Takes. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget that you can follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts at Construction Hot Takes. And while you're at it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel too at Ascent Consulting. If you want to drop a thumbs up or comments on your favorite video, that'll go a long way in helping our channel. And lastly, if you want to schedule a call directly with Adam, Greg, or Jeff to talk about problems or challenges facing your own construction companies, you can schedule free consultation calls directly with them on our website, www.ascentconsults.com. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.